I was 29 the first time I died. Dramatic, I know, but that's just who I was. A fiery activist, a woman torn between two worlds. My voice had carried across countless rallies, demanding justice for those whose love wasn't seen, wasn't valued. My drive came from a pain I rarely spoke about. Ryan, my little brother, disowned by our family for being gay. He was my heart, my anchor, and the fracture in our family still burned in me like an unhealed wound. Some said I was fearless. I wasn't. Beneath the placards and loudspeakers, beneath the stats I quoted about queer youth and their alarming rates of homelessness or mental health struggles, there was anger. Sharp, unforgiving anger directed at the God I grew up worshipping. That God had been used to beat people like Ryan into the ground, with verses that sounded more like weapons than love. So I abandoned faith. I abandoned anything that smelled of heaven. That day started like any other. I was in my element, finalizing the details for a fundraiser, surrounded by people who believed in the same vision: equality, dignity, love with no conditions. I laughed, my hands full of flyers, when the pain struck, sudden, brutal, like a fist squeezing my chest. I crumpled, gasping, my world narrowing to stars and static. There were voices, panicked voices, and then darkness. Hours, minutes, seconds. I don't know how much time passed, but when I opened my eyes again, I was watching myself. There I was, my body small and fragile, lying lifeless on a hospital bed, as nurses scrambled to bring me back. I floated above it, detached and eerily calm, as though someone had pressed pause on my emotions. Then it happened. The light. Not a harsh, blinding light, but something warm, alive. It felt like safety, like secrets you only whisper to those you trust. And I was being pulled toward it. A voice, or perhaps a feeling, murmured, "It's all right. You are home, Dot." I wasn't ready for home. Not then, not yet. But I wasn't given a choice. The light wrapped around me, tugging me further into a realm I couldn't understand. My rebellion, my doubt, my questions, they followed, burning inside me as I crossed into something vast, something beyond words. I thought I knew love. I was wrong. It hit me as I moved through the light. I wasn't walking, I wasn't flying. I simply was. The warmth wrapped tighter around me, like it could sense my defiance, my resistance to whatever lay ahead. I wanted answers, to demand them from this force pulling me deeper. My mind was on Ryan. Was this the place he should have been welcome to, the place I fought to make tangible for him and others who'd been cast aside? Tears burned, but they didn't fall. Even in this liminal state, I was still fighting. And then, the tugging stopped. For a moment, the light shimmered before dissolving into what I can only describe as infinite clarity. Colours I'd never seen arced and danced across vast open space, folding into shapes before shifting again. There were no walls, no floors, nothing to confine the expansiveness, or me. And yet I wasn't afraid. The anger that had lived in me like a roaring fire dulled into embers as I stared out into this strange, pulsing openness. Then they came. Figures emerged, not walking, but forming, their edges glowing with hues that felt alive. Men, women, non-binary beings. Their forms were human only in shape. Their essence, though, was something else entirely. They didn't speak, but communicated in waves, impressions, that tingled through me like whispers to the soul. Each was different, yet they all shared the same overwhelming energy. Love. Not romantic, not conditional, just pure. One stepped forward and I braced, my voice sharp and trembling. "Where am I?" There was no answer. Not in words, but suddenly their presence shifted, and I understood. "You already know." I wanted to argue, to scream that I didn't believe in any of this, but that voice, the one that had murmured, "You are home," when I was still floating, spoke again. Zoe. My name felt both intimate and vast on their lips, or what I assumed were lips. What breaks in you can always heal, but first, you must see asterisk. See what? I snapped, but they only smiled. The scene twisted as light became dark. The warmth I'd felt was stripped away. I stumbled. No, I felt myself falling into something far colder, something heavy. I wasn't ready for what came next, not at all. The fall was endless, like tumbling through layers of my own fear. The warm light had vanished, replaced by a shadowy expanse that pressed against me, heavy with something unspoken. My chest tightened. Not the physical pain I'd felt before, but a clenched ache, like every broken moment of my life realized itself all at once. You wanted to see, the voice came, softer now, but still present. The blackness began to shift, forming flickering images that cut like knives. A teenage Ryan stood in our childhood home, his voice small, yet defiant, as he came out to our parents. My father clenched his fist on the table, my mother's face folded in quiet judgment. We don't have a son like that. The memory was so vivid I cringed, powerless to intervene, powerless to shield him. More moments surfaced, Ryan crying into my shoulder, my whispered promises that I'd make the world better. Rally chants echoed, my voice carried by a bullhorn, but somehow it all felt hollow. I could see myself, raw and angry, my fists clenched tight around grief disguised as purpose. Then, the scene turned colder. A man, young, trembling, stood at the door of a church. He hugged a rainbow-printed backpack to his chest, hesitant as parishioners walked around him, their stares sharp with disapproval. My stomach twisted. I didn't know him, but somehow I knew this pain. Suddenly, the picture shifted, and there I was on a stage, my half-smile frozen mid-speech. In the crowd, that same young man stared at me with quiet admiration, his eyes wet with unspoken hope. I didn't understand, until my heart ached with the realization. He'd come because he thought I could save him. The scenes began to blur, threads weaving in and out. Humanity's wounds, rejection, isolation, intolerance, became a tapestry that knotted tighter with each stitch. Yet among the pain, there were sparks of light. Ryan's laughter over coffee, hands joining at protests, conversations that turned the tide for someone unseen. Every choice matters, every love heals, the voice hummed. A wave of warmth rippled through the cold, pulling me out of the shadows. Do you see now? I gasped, barely finding my voice. I don't know. You will. And then I was falling once more. They caught me in their arms, or at least that's how it felt, these radiant beings, these messengers of something too vast and elemental for me to name. The fall I braced for never came. Instead, I was held, safe, steady. And then, as if responding to a spark deep inside me, the darkness gave way. The space around me began to pulse, as though alive, reshaping into something tangible yet dreamlike. Light poured in, soft but persistent, illuminating what lay ahead. A bridge. At first glance, it seemed endless, stretching into nothing. But as I moved, or was moved closer, I saw them, figures, walking it. Some familiar, their forms glinting with faint echoes of people I'd loved, people I'd fought for. Others were entirely unknown, yet their presence stirred something in me I couldn't explain. Every step along the bridge triggered a vision, like the threads of my life unraveling and reweaving before me. My grief, my rage, my brother's pain. They were pieces of the same tapestry, one I had been too wounded to see clearly before. And now, I wasn't just seeing it. I was part of it. There is more, the voice returned, resonating through me as if it bypassed words entirely. I bristled at the familiarity but didn't resist. Ahead, the most vibrant form yet emerged, neither man nor woman, neither human nor celestial. A blinding convergence of light and presence. Even without eyes, I could feel it examining me, reading every fractured crevice of who I was. "Zoe," it said softly, so tenderly it nearly undid me. "Do you understand now?" Tears blurred my vision. Understand what? That it's all connected? That my pain wasn't mine alone? What do you want me to do with that? The being seemed to pulse, as though smiling. "It isn't about understanding. It's about being. Look." Its hand, or some shimmering equivalent, gestured toward the bridge. The figures crossing it weren't just walking, they were transforming. Their burdens, the shadows of rejection, loss, betrayal, melted away with every step. I realized with a sinking ache that this wasn't just a place of love, it was a place of belonging. And yet I didn't feel I belonged. Not yet. Not fully. The being's voice softened, almost like a lullaby. "What if love was not the reward, Zoe, but the beginning?" Before I could ask what that meant, the bridge disappeared. I was falling again. The light steadied, soft and persuasive, as if coaxing me into a moment I wasn't sure I could handle. Then it formed again. Not a figure, not a being, but presence. It moved closer, a pulse of radiance that neither spoke nor stayed silent but existed entirely as meaning. I braced myself, ready for another trial, another revelation eager to unmake me. But what came wasn't fire or light or shadow. It was stillness, vast and unbroken. In it, I felt laid bare, not judged, not condemned, just seen. Every rally chant, every trembling plea, every jagged moment of my life flared inside the stillness, like small fires burned down to embers. And then, from the stillness, it spoke again. "Why do you fight?" The question hit harder than expected. I crossed my arms, a defensive reflex even here. "Because someone has to." A pause. Warmth twisted through me, unraveling the rage knotted tight in my chest. "No, Zoe. Why do you fight?" I opened my mouth, ready to shout my reasons. Ryan, the church's rejection, the endless names on headstones too small for lives not yet lived. But when I tried, no words came out. Only memories. Memories of shouting until my throat burned, of holding Ryan's shaking hands, of staring at a God I no longer believed in and daring him to answer. "I'm afraid," I whispered finally. "Afraid of what happens if no one fights. Not just for Ryan, but for everyone who needs someone. I've seen what happens when we're forgotten. I've felt it." My voice cracked, not with anger, but something older, deeper. "I can't let love become a casualty of hate." The being pulsed gently, like an unseen hand stroking the fragile edge of my soul. And what if love was never the casualty? What if it was the answer? I froze. "What are you saying? That I've been wrong to fight?" "No," the voice said plainly, kindly. "Not wrong, but incomplete. True love, divine love, fights not with wounds but with healing. What you seek is not victory, it is wholeness." "Wholeness," I rasped, the single word consuming me. "Yes," it hummed, soft but unyielding. "And to bring it back, you must first carry it within." The vision dissolved, the weight of its words sinking into me like roots as I fell again, this time into myself. I braced myself as the light pulled back, leaving me standing alone in a vast, shifting fog. The warmth ebbed, replaced by a cold that seeped into my bones. The air grew heavy, thick with echoes of cries, prayers, and unanswered questions. I shivered, unsure if it was the chill or the ache creeping back into me. Then the voice returned, quieter now but steady. "You must see." Shapes began to emerge, memories drawn from the deepest corners of my mind. The small church of my childhood flickered into view, the wooden pews bathed in pale light. I watched as a younger me stood stiffly in the pew, reciting verses that had once been my foundation. At the front of the church, My father preached with conviction, his words sharp. Love the sinner, hate the sin. I flinched. The scene twisted violently, dissolving into Ryan's tear-streaked face, his defiant confession stabbing through the room. I'm gay. The silence from my parents was deafening. My father's eyes burned with fury. My mother's lips pressed into a thin line. You're no son of ours. I reached out instinctively, wanting to wrap my arms around him, to pull him away from that moment, but my hand passed through the memory. I could only watch as Ryan ran from the house, a teenager collapsing under the weight of his truth. My chest ached as I saw my own image, standing helpless at the edge of the doorway, unsure what to choose. Ryan or them. The scene blurred, and now I saw myself later, fists clenched around a protest sign, shouting into a megaphone, my voice a weapon aimed at the very faith I once trusted. But even as the image solidified, another voice broke through. Do you see? The voice asked. I gasped, tears streaming freely. See what? That the hurt never ends? That the same words meant to heal were used to break people like Ryan? I already know that pain. I've seen it, lived it. My voice cracked, but still I yelled into the fog. It's why I fight! The air shuddered, and the voice softened. Not to fight, Zoe. To heal. What broke them also broke you. The fog shifted, and at last I saw my reflection, fragmented but waiting to be whole. The air shimmered, vibrating with both stillness and a deep hum that I could feel in my marrow. I was suspended, yet grounded, like the core of me had been split open and held in place by something unseen, but all-encompassing. Then, as if the atmosphere itself exhaled, the being appeared again, not with form, but with undeniable presence. Its voice was more than sound. It was truth rippling through my soul. Zoe, it said, and the weight of my name unraveled me. The space around us dissolved into visions, memories I recognized and yet didn't. Ryan holding my hand at protests, laughter cutting through the gravity of our work. A young girl, no older than 15, clutching a sign that read, Love is louder, her tear-filled eyes locking onto mine across a sea of people. A man on the fringe of a church parking lot, his pride pin catching the sunlight as he stood uncertain, searching. I've seen this, I whispered. My voice trembled, but the words came unbidden, spilling like prayers. I was there for these people. I was the fight. The presence pulsed softly, neither reproachful nor agreeing. And yet, you were also closed. Before I could protest, the scene changed. Flashes of faces, those I had branded enemies. A preacher with a sweat-soaked Bible, shouting scripture I had dismissed as hate. A grandmother at a town hall clutching rosary beads, her words trembling about the natural order. Then, in stark contrast, my own face, shouting into a megaphone, anger etched into every corner of my expression. I fought hate with hate. The words were bitter on my lips as realization tightened its grip. My efforts to save lives had unwittingly severed connections, creating walls where I claimed to build bridges. What if love is not a weapon, Zoe, but the very ground you stand on? The voice asked. You sought change from anger. It's time to rewrite that. Tears blurred my vision, and I exhaled a shaky breath. But how? How do I fight without the fire? The voice softened, wrapping me in its warmth. By becoming wholeness, not division. By carrying what you've seen today, unconditional love, and letting it shape what you build next. The light expanded, enveloping me, and this time, I didn't resist. The fog began to clear, and suddenly, it was as though the universe opened itself to me. Not as stars or galaxies, but as threads, spinning endlessly in directions I couldn't comprehend. Each thread shimmered with life, pulsing faintly as though it carried within it a heartbeat, a story. They wove together, intersected, and branched apart again, forming what resembled an eternal sprawling tapestry. And I was part of it. At first, I only recognized the threads nearest to me. Ryan, vibrant and golden, entwined with mine, though frayed where rejection had torn us apart. My parents' threads, tightly wound in rigid patterns, looping in predictable, unbroken circles. The protest signs in my hands, the young man with the rainbow backpack, each fight, connection, moment. It was all here, on this infinite mural. And then, the view widened. I saw faces I didn't know. Children born long after I would be gone, their lives shaped by whispers of the fight I'd waged. A woman in another country, inspired by a protest video I'd barely remembered filming, rising to challenge her community's hatred. An older man, once a stranger I passed on the subway, touched by a silent smile I couldn't recall giving. Ripples. Everywhere. Ripples. "What is this?" I asked, my voice trembling as awe threatened to undo me. "This is humanity," the voice answered softly, resonating through me. "No soul moves alone. Every act of love, every act of hate, it flows outward, weaving the fabric you see." There was profound beauty in the patterns, but there was also pain. Gaping holes, places where hate had severed the threads, hung ragged and raw. And yet, even here, filaments of light tried to stitch them closed. "You are one of those threads, Zoe," the voice whispered. "What you choose, anger, love, forgiveness, creates the fabric of another's life." Tears spilled freely now as I whispered, "I've hurt the tapestry, haven't I? In my rage, I've torn pieces of it." "You have," it admitted, its tone gentle, "and you've also mended others. Your pain has created paths of light, but now you must learn to weave with love." The tapestry shimmered once more, threads glowing brighter with possibility. And in that moment, I understood. Love was not a reward, but the foundation, the thread that mended all things. The decision hung in the air, heavy, vast, and stretching across the infinite space around me. I wasn't sure if it was the voice that asked me the question, or if it came from somewhere deeper, somewhere within. Stay or go. It would have been easy to stay, to let the light envelop me in its warmth forever. I had never felt love this absolute, this unyielding, this complete. It didn't just see me, it knew me, every jagged edge and fractured piece. Despite it all, I was wanted here. For the first time, my fight seemed irrelevant, my anger weightless. This realm pulsed with perfection, with belonging. Wasn't this what I'd always longed for? But then I saw them, the faces. Ryan, smiling over coffee, his laughter a refuge during our darkest days. The girl at the rally, clutching her handmade sign, her eyes pleading with me to keep going. The boy at the church door, his rainbow backpack a silent scream for acceptance. And more, so many more. A sea of lives I'd barely touched but somehow impacted, rippling outward in ways I could only now begin to comprehend. "These threads are yours, Zoe," the voice murmured, not accusing but urgent. "But some remain loose, waiting to be woven." Tears burned hot in my eyes, the ache of grief and love intermingling in my chest. What if I can't do it? What if I fail them again? My voice broke, raw with vulnerability. "Love is not about perfection," the voice replied. "It's about persistence. Healing takes presence. And Zoe, healing starts with you." I hesitated, drawn to the comfort of staying, but unable to ignore the pull of the lives I had fought for, the lives I still had to fight with. Suddenly, a vision shifted before me. Ryan, sitting alone by his window, staring at a photo of us as kids. His shoulders were heavy, his spirit dimmed. My absence, I realized, would become another weight on him, a thread I couldn't bear to leave untied. The light around me brightened as if sensing my resolve. "Will I remember this?" I asked, trembling. You'll remember the love, it said simply. Go, Zoe. Not to fight, but to heal. And with that, I fell back toward earth, the warmth of heaven still cradling me. I opened my eyes to the sharp hum of fluorescent lights and the murmur of voices, muffled as though filtered through water. My chest ached, each shallow breath feeling like it travelled 1,000 miles. I wasn't sure where, or when, I was. Then, a hand. Warm and trembling, it closed over mine, and I turned my head to see Ryan, his tear-stained face a kaleidoscope of disbelief, relief, and something deeper. Love. The hospital bed beneath me felt more real with every moment, the weight of my body heavy against its unforgiving frame. I tried to speak, but my voice snagged, my throat raw as if I had been screaming for days. Ryan leaned closer, his thumb brushing over my knuckles. You're back, he whispered, his voice breaking. Zoe, you're here. Tears blurred my vision as fragmented memories flooded me. The light, the voices, the tapestry of lives intertwined, the boundless love. My mind spun with the enormity of all I had witnessed, of what I now carried inside me. I was part of something so vast it defied words, a thread in the intricate fabric of humanity, and I had chosen to return. Ryan, I croaked, my voice barely audible. But he heard it. He always had. He crumpled forward, resting his forehead against my hand, his shaking shoulders echoing with sobs he probably thought he had buried long ago. This moment, this closeness, was sacred, and I vowed never to let the threads between us fray again. Around us, doctors and nurses fluttered, speaking medical jargon I couldn't follow. Machines beeped and clicked, a reminder of the fragility of my body, but none of it mattered. What mattered was the warmth of Ryan's hand in mine and the quiet reverence in his eyes when he lifted his gaze. I saw it. I managed to whisper. I saw everything. Love, Ryan. It's more powerful than I ever thought. He swallowed hard, a question forming in his expression, but he nodded as though he already understood. I didn't know where to begin or how to explain. The fight wasn't over, far from it, but it was no longer fueled by anger. It was time to heal, to mend the world, one thread at a time. The room was silent, save for the faint whispers of the crowd gathering beyond the stage. My heart thudded in my chest, not from the physical strain I was still recovering from, but from the weight of what I was about to share. The podium stood center stage, waiting for me. Ryan was in the front row, hands clasped tight, his eyes a beacon of trust and hope. I drew strength from that. When I stepped into the light, the crowd fell still. I could see it in their faces, the hunger for answers, the skepticism, the curiosity. Taking a shaky breath, I began, my voice unsteady but determined. Not long ago, I thought I knew what love was. I fought for a world where no one had to justify their right to exist, where people like my brother weren't pushed to the outskirts of society. But I fought with anger. I told myself it was righteous, necessary. But what I didn't realize until I died was that my anger, no matter how just, burned me and others along the way. I paused, letting the weight of my words hang in the air. When I died, I saw something that changed me forever. I saw a love so vast, so unconditional, that it defied every box we try to put it in. It wasn't tethered to religion, to identity, or to who was right and who was wrong. It simply was. It wasn't something to fight for. It was something I had to become. A murmur rippled through the room, but Ryan's gaze stayed steady, and so did I. This love taught me that true change doesn't come from burning bridges, but from building them. That healing isn't just for those we fight for, it's for us too. I used to think love was the reward for winning the fight. But now I know, it's the foundation for everything. My voice broke, but I pressed on. I returned so I could share this. Love heals, it transforms, it belongs to all of us. And I believe, with all my heart, it's time to live like that's true. Tears blurred my vision as I stepped back. The applause began slowly, then grew, but all I saw was Ryan, his tearful smile lighting up the room. God will guide you, but I promise you this, it's worth it. If you've felt a stirring in your heart, I encourage you to seek Jesus. Open your heart to him, and he will meet you where you are. Thank you for listening to my journey. If you'd like to share your thoughts or ask for prayer, leave your name in the comments below. And if you're curious to hear more stories like mine, check out the videos on your screen now. Each one is a testament to the power of faith, grace, and God's unending love.